Hello, everyone. Good evening. Hi, my name is Menina Putri Wismurti. I'm the festival co-director of Europe on Screen 2020. Selamat malam semuanya. Thank you so much for participating at tonight's Q&A session with the director of the Portuguese movie film The Dead Queen, Mr. António Ferreira. Before we start, I would like to actually... Hi, Antonio. Oh, you're still muted, I think.
Hello.
Hi, Antonio.
Hi,
It's good to have
selamat
you with
datang.
us. Ah, obrigada.
De nada.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Yes, before we start with the Q&A session, I will just going to inform everyone the rule of this webinar. Please note that the webinar session is broadcasted live also in our YouTube at the Europe on Screen YouTube.
Okay.
And then all the session will be held in English. If you want to ask the question in Indonesian language, please do so. And I will help to translate your question to Mr. Antonio here. And also you can deliver your question in the button Q&A below. If you see the Q&A button below, you can deliver your question over there. So yes, I think we could start. So how are you? How is it right now?
Fine. Here it's noon, and we have a sunny day today, although we are
Ah,
almost in the winter.
good. So a sunny day in the winter, that's very good.
Yes, here in Portugal we call it the São Martinho summer. So it's these few days in November that usually for some reason it's kind of hot. So we are above 20 degrees, which is not so usual for November.
Because usually it's cold in
Yeah,
November.
yeah, yeah. It's really cold. Not
Yeah.
really, but okay, below 20. Not
But
like in Indonesia.
no, we have a 34-degree at this moment.
Yes,
Too hot.
I lived in Bali for some months, not so long.
Ah,
This year actually. I was in Bali when the pandemic started. So
ah,
so we had to leave just before everything closed
okay.
last March.
Oh, that's good. Where in Bali you were saying?
Not Karabokan, nearby. I can't really
Canggu?
remember. No, I will remember.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Great. So yes, your film has been screened actually yesterday, and then no, 2 days ago actually. And then what I would probably to start, you can actually share us the process. That, as I know that the story is inspired by a true story actually,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yes, in the 14th
Century. Yeah,
century. Yes.
it's actually like the Romeo and Juliet, Portuguese Romeo and Juliet. So it's a true story from this Portuguese king that when while he was still a prince, he fell in love with one of the mistresses from his wife, princess. So and because she was of Spanish origin, the government court and the king, his father, believed that there could be a risk of losing the crown to Spain because Portugal and Spain were always at war.
Ah,
So he had this woman sent killed. So she was beheaded. She was killed, like well, like
like
how
the
we showed in
movie.
the movie,
Mhm.
and he kind of went mad. So when he became king, um, he started persecuting all the killers of Ines, of this woman, and he became really violent. So that not so long ago, like 15 years ago, there was this book from a Portuguese writer, Rosa Lobato Faria, that she, I mean, as you can imagine, throughout the ages, this story has been told and retold with lots of variations because of the dramatic side to it. And recently, there was this writer who rewrote this story in three different times, like in the Middle Ages, present times, and in a utopic future. So the film is an adaptation from this book. So that's where the idea comes from, to retell this story that happened a long time ago, but happening in three different parallel times somehow. So that's how the film started.
Mhm. And that's why you and why do you come across to this adaptation of the literature? Because you read the book, or maybe because
Yes, I read the book, and this story happened in in the city where I live, which is Coimbra.
oh
Actually, I live really in front of the palace where they used to live. So, so here in Coimbra, there's a lot of places called Pedro and Inés. We have the bridge called Pedro and Inés. We have a certain kind of bread called Pedro and Inés, a certain kind of wine. So it's
a
all
bread.
over yeah, there's a lot because it's really this love story that everybody just keeps telling and telling. Actually, last year there was a theater play inspired again on this story. So it's really a famous story in Portugal. And when I read the book, because of these three different times, I thought, oh, this is an opportunity to retell this story in a completely different way. So that's when I started adapting the story. I talked with the writer, which is not alive anymore, and then finally we got to make the movie.
Mm. And how did you manage to do the auditioning for the cast itself?
Oh, that was a long process because we saw around 300 actors
Oh,
during the process. I didn't have anyone specific in mind,
mm,
so I worked with a casting director, and we just started looking at Pedro's and Ines, so uh, girls and boys for these main roles. And then finally, actually, the actor that plays Pedro came to me on the first session of the casting on the first day. But I kept on looking and looking and looking until I came across this panel of actors. They're both very, very famous in Portugal.
ah,
Both Diogo, which plays the role of
yeah,
Pedro, and Joanna, who plays the role of Ines. They are quite famous actors in Portugal.
okay. And also as I watch the film itself, there is actually a kind of a context of being reborn and reincarnation, which is also close to the society, to the culture in Asia and
Hmm.
Indonesia as well.
Hmm.
So is it also a part of the character that portrayed very well in the book, or do you also added that as part, because it's really, I don't know, it's really vivid in the movie.
Hmm.
I haven't read the book yet, but
Hmm.
uh, how, how do you
Uh,
portray this?
well, I think it's when you start telling not the same story, but like parallel stories about
Mm,
these same characters. Of course, this idea of reincarnation comes to mind immediately.
mm,
I didn't want it to make it like crystal clear that it's about
mm,
reincarnation, but of course you think about it. Although I think it more like parallel times happening simultaneously, and not really like something that happened before and after and after. So the way I designed the story, because in the adaptation process you always change a lot of stuff, uh, I thought it more like it's all happening at the same time. It's not like something happened in the 14th century, and then centuries after they reincarnated and something similar happened again, and then they reincarnated and it's happened again. So it's more like the three lines of time are happening and they are influencing each other simultaneously. So that's why sometimes in a movie you see something happening in the 14th century, and then the
mm,
next scene is like a continuation of the scene of the previous scene, but 5 centuries after. So everything is connected, everything is influencing each other. That was my idea.
mm. And I believe this is like your fourth or third film.
It's my third feature film. Yes,
Yes, third feature. Oh,
yes.
okay. And then what is the biggest challenge that you faced during the making of this film?
Well, the biggest challenge is always
The
financing the movie.
funding, the funding.
that's actually what it takes longer. I mean, we were with this project. I think the first time I met the author, we were in 2007.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so we the film premiered in 2018, so 11 years after. So we were basically like 9 years financing the film, writing and financing, writing and rewriting and financing. And then, of course, producing it was a difficult film because we have all these three different times, especially the middle age this time is really expensive to portray all the art direction, all the horses, all the clothing, all the standing. So it was a challenge, but it was a lot of pleasure also. We shot it in everything in Coimbra and around here. So all because it's a story of the city, so everybody was really keen to do it and wanting to do it, and it although it was a drama, we really had kind of fun doing all these bloody things and stuff like that.
What motivates you to keep on going? Like, I mean, 2007 until
Yes.
2018. Wow, that's
Yeah, it's you really. I always say that doing movies is for marathon runners. It's not for speed runners because it always takes such a long time since your first draft of the script until you finally get the money. You go through so many stages. You show the project to so many people, television chains, distributors, convincing people to give you the money. So yeah, I mean, what motivates you is you want to make the film. So and you with time you realize that's the way it works. You just have to keep showing and showing, and meanwhile you write another one. So when you shoot the film, you already have the next one on the line to go. So yeah, I'm
ah,
working on simultaneous projects.
okay. So in the same time, you also make another one.
Yes. You start writing at least.
That's good.
That's what I'm
And
doing now.
okay, that's good. And how did it go for the Dead Queen in the Portugal
Oh,
for
it
the
went
film?
really well. We were the most seen Portuguese film of the year. So it's always rewarding that after such a long time, people then go to the cinemas, watch the movie, which is not always obvious. It's harder and harder to bring people to the cinemas nowadays,
Yeah, true.
especially if you're competing with the Americans with all their big stars and big budgets. But we were the number one box office Portuguese movie, and we had a lot of feedback. And it's a drama. Usually, it's comedy is making the number one, and we are happy that.
Oh,
Yeah, most of the time it's a comedy, which is the most seen movie of the year. So we are happy that we, as a drama, we got to make it to number one.
okay. And we have already question from our
Okay.
audience here. Uh, Hi, Antonio. How do you handle with the COVID-19 pandemic and how does it impact your film production? So Wella here is from the journalist, actually, from iNews
Okay.
TV. Thank you.
Uh, okay. So like everybody, we are on a pandemic, and we had the full lockdown in March, April, like most of Europe. Then and then it started reopening again. So the film industry had to also stopped. And then when it reopened, there's these all sort of rules. There can't be that many people on the set. There has to be disinfections all over. Actors and team have to be tested before they go to the set.
Mm.
For example, I had a friend who was shooting last month. They put it everybody. They tested everybody. They put it everybody inside the hotel, so the team couldn't go home during their 6 weeks of shooting. They would just go from the hotel to the shooting place and then go back to the hotel. So that's how people are dealing with it. And right now, we are coming to a second lockdown because we are getting the second wave, and since it started like 2 3 weeks ago that it started to get worse again. We had a good summer. Everybody could go out into the beach, I mean, with the mask and carefully. But then now with the winter it's getting worse again, and actually it's worse than it was in the first wave. So
Oh,
We have now to go home after 11 o'clock in the evening. In the weekends, we can't go out of the house after 1 p.m. So it's getting worse now, like all over
Uh,
Europe. And it's worse than it was in March, April, actually.
I see. And also all the cinemas are closed again.
Uh, the government it's trying to keep the cultural places open.
Mm,
So they allow 1/3 of the maximum rotation inside the theaters and cinemas, so they're still
I
open.
see. I see.
Because they so far there's no evidence that people are getting contaminated inside the cinemas. Uh, Actually, people are not going that much to the cinemas. For you to have an idea, I think they reopened the cinemas in June,
Oh,
and
during the summer.
yeah, just before the summer. But only 10% of the people that used to go are going now. So it's less. It's much less people going to the cinemas than it was. So they're not so full. The government, because
Mm,
all the people that work with cultural things like theater, musical shows, cinemas, they really were struck very heavily because it was one of the first things to completely close. So people were running out of money and stuff like that. And the government is really trying to keep the cultural business open so that we don't collapse. But it's hard because people are afraid they're not really going to cinemas and theaters, but they are still open.
yeah. Okay. Okay. And there's another question actually. So it's actually from YouTube, as we are also broadcasted live
Okay.
on the YouTube. It's in Indonesian. I'm just going to translate it to you. So in the utopic scene, uh, there is actually a sacrificing moment where the victim is being put at the at the graveyard. So there was yeah, in the utopic scenes where they gave a human sacrifice, I think. So that person was asking about the meaning of that scenes. Is there any necessity or is there any relation to the whole ritual? Because she said that she doesn't understand.
Oh, in the beginning when somebody's getting killed in
Yeah.
the future scene. Yeah,
Yes.
my idea was to characterize a community in a imaginary future. So in because I was reading, I completely rewrote this future sequence, this idea of the future. And
Mm,
I was reading a lot. I mean, it's always hard to imagine how the future will be. It can be a lot of things, and it will be a lot of things. But I think you can see a kind of a tendency of people moving outside the cities and going to the fields again, and becoming farmers and growing their own food. So my idea was to imagine this kind of closed community where they live all together, completely closed from the outside. I was a bit inspired by the Israeli kibbutz in the 50s and the 60s, where they would
oh,
live completely closed, and everybody would just work on the fields. There was this idea also talking about this kibbutz that the women and the men they do exactly the same work, and the kids are put away. That's where I come with this idea that everybody sleeps in this dormitory.
yeah.
And I mean, one of and I was reading about this more radical ecologists that there's this line of thinking that is called ecofascism, which are some kind of fascistic ecological people. They exist. It's not I'm not inventing something. And one thing they say, it's one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest threats to the planet. It's there's too many people. So that's where I came with the idea that in this community, if you're sick or if you're too old, then there's no sense for you to be alive, to stay alive. So if you can't work anymore, and if you live in this kind of radical society,
Mm,
then you better just commit suicide. So that's where this idea of euthanasia comes, and it's this scene where this person is, you can see that he's sick.
yeah.
So he has this courageous attitude of committing suicide, of committing euthanasia. So that is was to characterize this community as really being run in a kind of dictatorial way. That's why they can't marry the people they want to. It's
Yes.
the elders of the community that say, okay, this one and this one can get married and are allowed to have one child because they can't have too many kids because it's not good for the environment.
Right. So this is to emphasize the radicality of this
Yes.
futuristic, the utopic era, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also to establish this parallel with the original story where princes couldn't marry just what they want. I mean, they would have to follow the rules of the
Ah,
king.
yeah.
It's one of the first scenes in the Middle Ages. It's the father comes and says, "Okay, I made an agreement. You're going to marry this woman. It's not
Yeah.
up to you to decide. So we decided for you because it's for the good of the country." So it was also to establish this kind of parallels between the stories.
Ah, all right. Okay. And we have other questions too. Uh, as there are three different unparalleled during shooting, which period that you like more to shoot?
Okay. Um, actually, I mean, all the periods that their their thing. Of course, shooting the Middle Ages was more. It was more adrenaline because of all the costumes and all the art direction. And we shot all the periods in the sequence. So we started shooting the hospital, and basically the order we chose had to do with one thing, with the beards of the men,
Yeah.
because we wanted to use real bears. And so we started in the hospital with the hospital scenes where
Mm-hmm.
the main actor has a really
The
long beard.
passion. Yes.
And then we went to the Middle Ages because men usually had beards. So we just made it the king's beard a bit shorter. We shot everything in the past, in the Middle Ages. Then we moved to the future, and then we cut it hairs, we cut it all the beards, and then at last we shot the present times. So it was really in the sea, and we would just change it from one day to another. So on Monday, we shot the last day of Middle Ages. During the night, they were painting hairs, cutting beards, and on Tuesday, we were started a completely new epoch, which was kind of strange for us. It always took us a couple of days to get into the new age.
Yeah, and that's why Pedro is getting cleaner
Yes,
and the
it's getting
modern
cleaner
time.
and cleaner. Yeah. The idea is
Okay.
it was to make them as different as possible from time to time.
Ah,
Changing
all right.
hair, changing hair color, of course, in
Yes.
the men cutting the beards. And
Yeah, that's true. Yes. And also another one as writing. Hi, Antonio. Writing one story is hard. Not to mention writing three stories in some ways. How did you manage with the editing? Do you have any guideline of which direction you want it to go? Or are there any specific story that you add during the editing process itself?
Okay, I mean, I had the original story, the true story, so that was our guideline. So I had this prince who got married with another princess, but he fell in love with the princess mistress. Then she got killed, and then the woman dies. Then they have kids, and then she gets killed. So we had the real story as a guideline, and then I started building around it. So as I told you, each story is completely independent. So we could just see each of the stories independent, but we don't see things repeating. So if something happens in the Middle Ages, the next scene in the future is kind of a continuation of the scene we saw before 7 centuries ago. So that was the way I built the story. And then in the editing, I just followed the script. So what you see in the movie, it was on the script. Of course, these flashback scenes where we mix everything. Basically, we just when we were doing the shooting, I would shoot some things in slow motion or with these special light effects,
Mhm.
and that I will just to bring it to the editing, and then to decide later what I do with it. But all the structure was already in the script. I pretty much followed what was in the script.
Okay. But also I realized that you put a different kind of like one red thread of the mood of Pedro after he realized that he lost Ines again. But then at the same time you also put a different kind of mood to differentiate all these three realm basically. And also there is a different kind of sound or soundtrack to each of the
Yeah,
scenes.
exactly.
Do you use different musicians, or how do you?
No, no, it was all the same musician, and
Ah,
we had that in mind. So each time as a kind of specific sounds. Actually, it was more like instruments because the songs are more or less the same. We have like
okay.
four main themes that will rearrange them along the movie. So the movie will get. It starts more light and it gets
Yes.
harder and harder and darker and darker.
Intense, yeah.
Yeah, the idea is to I mean the main character is becoming crazy in a way, so
Yeah.
the idea is that we go with him, we are inside his head, so we are participating in this madness process somehow, and so that reflects in the music, that reflects in the way we lit scenes, that reflects in the art direction. Everything was built to so that we dive with him in this process, mental process of him.
Mhm. Do you also want to address this? Because I saw it also as part of a mental health issue that needed to be addressed after loving a person too deep like that. Do you want to address also this issue in
Yeah,
your film?
actually, I think that's one of that's in the movie. Actually, most 80% of the voiceover that you hear, it's taken from the book, from
Ah,
the this book I told you, which is
yeah.
called A Trança de Inês, which is Ines braid. You know, a braid where
Ines
you
Braid, yeah.
yeah,
The
so
hair.
this the idea of interlacing different times that become one thing. So it's
Oh, that's a
three different
philosophy.
times, but actually it's three different stories, but somehow it's one story, it's one character. That's the way I would like it to feel in the end. That although you saw three different things, but in the end everything comes together. It's just one story of this spirit of Pedro, and that was in the book. This idea: am I mad, or are the other ones mad?
Mhm.
What's madness about?
Yeah,
So there's a philosophical side to it, which was in the book, and I wanted to bring to the movie. Actually, it's this poetic sense. It's really present in the book, and it's so beautiful that I really wanted to bring it to the movie, this kind of
yeah.
lyrical love line in some kind of old-fashioned way.
Yes, and you managed to deliver that, captured it beautifully.
Okay, thank you.
And we have also another question from Fanny. Hi, Antonio. How long process production of this movie and how response from the people? I think we have discussed that, right? You from
Yeah,
2007 until
yeah, and
2018.
we shot for 7 weeks. The shooting was 7 weeks, so
Ah, okay.
not so long for a movie big like this. And then I was editing for like 6 months, more or less, until it was ready.
Ah, okay. And it was premiere
It
in
was
Portugal,
premiered in Montreal at the
in
film
Montreal.
festival in Montreal. I think September 2018. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Okay. And then another question from Young Mei. Hola, Antonio. You said you live near to the palace. Have you always been interested in making a film about the king since you were little? And when and how was the moment of realization came to you that you finally decide to make a film about the king's story?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the time came when I read the book, but since in the city where I live, Coimbra, this story is really all over the place. So if you're from here, actually you become kind of bored with hearing this all the time. So, oh, Pedro Inês, Pedro Inês. So actually, I never, it never crossed my mind talking about this, because usually
So
I write my own stories from scratch. But then I read this book, and I thought, wow, but this is a completely new approach.
yeah.
It's an opportunity to look with fresh eyes to an old story that you hear all the time. Actually, you
Mhm.
studied in school also, so it's not something at least for me, it wasn't something like that I liked. So, but when I read the book, because of these three different times and this totally different approach, I thought, okay, now this is an opportunity to speak about it. And then, yeah, that's when I decided to do it.
Yeah, so like you said before, Pedro and Ines, this is like Romeo and Juliet in Verona, and Coimbra is Verona, best.
Yeah, it's all over the place. It's really all over the place. We just had
Ah,
a pedonal bridge, which is really beautiful, built some years ago, and the name of the bridge is Pedro. And it's the Love Bridge, Pedro. So,
all right.
but it's
Okay.
a lot of cafes. There's, if you go to the restaurant, there will be a dish called Pedro and Inés. I don't know. It's all over the place. It's incredible.
Okay. It is good that we know Pedro and Ines from your movie instead
Yeah.
from the bread.
So this is a new approach to the theme.
Yes,
I think
exactly.
people were expecting when the film came out, they were expecting more of this. I don't know how to tell it. This romantic story, but I mean, it's also romantic. But I mean, it's a tragic story. She gets killed. So,
Yes.
and I think some people weren't expecting that it becomes so dark in the end. They were
Yeah, I think
expecting
it's
more like a up thing, and in the end, it's kind of. I mean, in the end, the very end, there's some kind of re-meeting of them because they live for eternity together. But until we get there, there's a lot of bad stuff going on.
yeah, but it is very I personally feel that it's a very sad story and that at the end it's like, oh, it become like a kind of ancient Greek kind of mythology
Yes,
where they become
exactly.
happy.
Yes. After all that.
Yeah, after all that miserable moment. So
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. And there is another one from Sarifa. A question. Has there been a time during your career when you had to make significant artistic compromises during filming? If yes, would you mind
Uh,
elaborating on why those compromises had to be made and how you ultimately dealt with them?
okay. I mean, movie making involves a lot of people, so
Yes.
it's really a cooperative art milieu. Unlike writing or maybe painting, where it's you and the book and the painting board, you're alone. I mean, movie making is really you have to work with dozens and dozens of people. In this movie, for example, we had every day like 60 people on the set, plus actors, plus extras. Sometimes we would have like 150 people on the set. So you really have to work with everybody. And usually the hardest part is really financing because it takes a long time. Movies are expensive. It's an expensive art form. So I mean, I've always made the films I wanted to with the actors that I would like to, but I know if I want to bring a distributor interested in the film, then I would have to have some kind of stars in it. Otherwise,
Mm.
they won't invest in my film, or they would say, okay, let me see the film first, and then I'll decide if I invest or not. But that's not what you want. You want money before that you can go shooting. So you're always compromising in a way, and um, uh, otherwise the film doesn't get done. But at least here, I was also the producer of the movie along with my wife. She's the producer, so I didn't have a producer telling me, "Oh, you can't do that," or "You have to do this." So I did the movie I want to. I edited it the way I wanted to. But for example, my first cut was 2 hours and a half, and then when I showed it to the distributor, he said, "Okay, it's up to you. But if you give me a 2.5 long movie, I will give you less cinemas because
Yeah, true.
I can't put it in so many cinemas. We premiered in around 50 cinemas, so it would be half of that. So it's up to you to decide." So it's this kind of compromising that you're making all the times, and you realize, okay, so maybe I don't need this extra half an hour. Maybe the film even becomes better if I cut this and that scene. Nobody forced me to, but you have to compromise.
That's true.
And
So
it's okay, I think, because if you're working with people that have been doing movies for a long time, for example, we made some test screenings. So I always look for feedback from the people. Sometimes I saw that people wouldn't understand this or that, so I tried to re-edit in a way that it would become clear. Even today, people ask me, "What was that plane in the sky?" Really, everybody asks me that. Yeah, movie making, you have to compromise. But I was free to compromise the way I wanted to have
Yes,
the
I
final
think
decision.
yes, I think I think some of the filmmaker are still lucky to have that kind of compromising.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you go to the Hollywood system, the directors usually
Yeah,
don't even have the final cut decision. But that's not
exactly.
the case in Europe. Usually, you have the final cut, but you're not alone. You are
Ah,
you are with a producer, you are
right.
with distributors, so you should listen to them at least.
Yeah, and to consider what their input, right?
And then maybe I mean you're making a movie. You're such a long time with it,
True.
writing, the shooting, that sometimes you don't have the distance to look at your film as like
Mm.
for the first time. So it's
Hmm.
good to hear people from the outside that look at it for the first time and are not in love with the movie the way you are. So they would see
Mm.
the problems the movie have as. So I try to have that spirit of maybe I'm not looking at it right. Let me listen to other people, and then I decide. But let me listen to it to the people first.
Ah, okay. Oh, that's a good also a good tips actually,
Yeah,
just to take to take a distance from the movie
yeah,
that you're
yeah. Because
making
it's
and
really
to
hard. I mean, you've been there all the
yes,
years, so you think
yeah,
everything is great, and maybe it's not
yeah,
that
true.
great sometimes.
Yeah, that's so true. Yes, and also you were mentioning about funding. I was just curious, how is it going with the funding of cinema in Portugal?
So we have a film institute,
Ah, okay.
which is a public.
Yeah.
It depends on the Minister of Culture,
Mm-hmm.
and we have different taxes, like taxes over of television, advertising
Right.
on television, of film
Okay.
tickets, etc. So all this money from these different taxes goes to a fund that the Film Institute manages, and then they every year they open a lot of different contests where you
Mm-hmm.
finance movies, and they support movies. and and
Uh,
and recently, actually it's quite new, we just which is something that is happening all across Europe. There's a new
yeah.
streaming tax. So because now with the new technologies,
Mm,
companies like Netflix, Amazon, HBO, they're really taking over the market. So conventional televisions are losing market to these streaming companies. And across Europe, it's more or less this model of financing movies. So the people who broadcast things, they
yeah.
have to contribute to the production of local films.
So they have
Films
to invest.
they have to invest, and the streaming companies were outside this because they are internet companies. So now we have a new tax. France just approved it. I think Germany also. These companies now they will have to start investing in local productions also. So that's the way the movies are financed in Portugal and across Europe. That's more or less the model.
Okay.
And
And
even internet companies like Vodafone and stuff,
yeah,
they have to contribute to the film industry because everybody's watching movies now in their cell
yeah,
phones and
true.
using data, streaming data. So the idea is that all the chain that's benefiting from these movies,
Hmm.
that they have to invest so that things don't die. Otherwise, we will just have American movies. So because you can't compete without this kind of policies.
Yeah, that's true. And also the market in Portugal is still dominated by American films or
Oh,
more into
yeah. It's
oh,
like
okay.
80% of the movies in the cinemas are American movies,
Ah,
and
okay.
80% of the box office it's from American movies.
Yeah, the same is here in here as well. I mean, we rarely see European films in the cinemas too.
You don't,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah,
see, yeah.
we don't see. I mean, usually probably like only one film, but and usually mostly from
Probably
France.
French,
Yes, French or Germany.
or Italian, maybe,
No, not even. I think I
or even
don't think
Italian.
so. Yeah, so that's really really rare. That's why we are having this festival, the European Film Festival, to screen all these European films in one place.
I mean,
And
if you don't have public policies that defend local movies, it's really hard to compete. So it
True.
depends from country to country. I can give you another example because I live in Brazil for a long time, and we have
Mm.
our production company is also in Brazil. And Brazil had the same problem, like 89% of the movies in cinemas were American. But so they
Ah,
started investing really hard in
mhm.
production. So right
Okay.
now, Brazil produces, right now it's with the crazy president, it's going down. But before the crazy president, they were making like 200 movies a year. So it's a lot. 200
200
movies.
movies.
Yeah.
Brazilian films.
Brazil,
Wow.
Brazil, just Brazilian, locally produced with local
Wow.
actors and stuff. And
But
for
now,
example,
like,
they
less.
now it's completely stopped. Then nobody really
Oh my
knows
God.
who. Yeah, because they blocked the funding because they say the movie makers are communists, and they and they,
Seriously?
yeah, yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
it's a crazy government. No, it's true. It's true. That
Wow.
they are
Okay.
making Marxist propaganda. Literally, they say it like this.
Yeah. Okay.
And for example, they established quotas in the cinemas for
Mm.
local films. So, for example, there's a complex with 10 rooms, with 10
Yeah.
cinemas, like in shopping centers. One of them has to show at least a certain percentage of amount of local films. Same in television. If you want to have a television license, you have to show at least 20% of national content in prime time, and etc., etc. So the market then starts to develop. You see, if you
Mm.
don't do nothing, the Americans just come in and they take over. It's there's no way. So you really have to
Yeah.
protect your local market.
Yeah. That's true. And also about your next project, are you going to have a co-production with the system that you just explained it to us previously?
Yes, I mean this Pedro, this Dead Queen, we will co-produce with France and Brazil. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, that's the three countries where were able to raise money.
Mm-hmm.
And the next project so far, it's a co-production with Brazil. So let's see, maybe a third country comes in, maybe Spain, maybe France, because it's usually where you can, being from Portugal, these are the countries where our country has kind of bilateral agreements with the film institutes. So there's an agreement between Portugal and Brazil to give money to Brazilian films and vice versa.
Ah.
There's an agreement between Portugal and France where we fund films from both countries. So that's how
Mm-hmm.
you start building. There's European programs for that. So far it's Brazil and Portugal, and yeah, let's see if next year we're able to shoot it.
So it is planned to happen in next year.
Yeah, we are partially funded already.
Oh, cool. Good
But
luck for that.
I've been working on it for at least 10 years. Huh?
Oh, oh
It
yeah, since
was
2007, you were
Yeah,
saying.
yes. We started before shooting Pedro and Inez. So that's why we work with parallel projects. So one happens, then the next one maybe happens 2 years after or 3 years after. Let's see.
Ah, okay. Is it possible to share a little bit of
Yes.
story?
So in a very short form, it's a story about this guy who lives in the city outskirts, in the city suburbs, and he's a cook, and
Sh-
he's cooking for these delivery apps to make a living. Going on
Ah,
bicycle to deliver
yeah,
food
yeah,
to people's homes.
yeah.
But he's making this fast food, but actually he's really an excellent cook, like really refined, really gourmet. And what will happen in his life is that he will fall in love with a famous TV star who's presenting the most famous TV show at night. So he finds a way to sneak into her house every night while she's on TV, and he will cook for her and then leave. And this TV star will start getting in love, falling in love with this mysterious character that comes into her house, cooks for her, and then goes away. So the idea is to talk about two completely different people, like a humble guy, a poor guy from the suburbia, and this gorgeous TV star from the bright world, and how these two stories come together. That's the purpose of the film.
So two people from two different worlds.
Worlds, yeah, and how these worlds will cross. That's
Ah.
the thesis.
All right. So yes, looking forward for that, and good luck for this next
Thank you very
project,
much.
Antonio. Yes, and thank you so much for
I thank
participating.
you. It was a
Yes,
pleasure. Good
and
luck
your
for this festival. I hope you do a lot more and that a lot of people come to watch the movies.
yes, thank you. And before we end this, I think we will have a photo op. Neta, our host, will actually show us how to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, please look at your camera and stay
Okay, I'm
still
looking
for
here.
1 to 2 seconds to avoid any delay. And I will count to three. 1, 2, 3. Smile.
Oh, I'm smiling.
Me too.
One more time. One more time. One,
Okay.
2, 3. All right. Thank you, Antonio.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much, Antonio.
Okay, thank
Good
you very
luck
much.
for your next project. And your
Okay, and
film will
thank you.
still be screened in our festival until the next 5 days.
Okay.
And yes, and good luck.
Okay.
Stay safe.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for all of our attendees tonight. Terima kasih banyak sudah bergabung dengan kami malam ini. Thank you for participating at the film talks at the 5th day of Europe on Screen 2020. And tomorrow we will have another film talk with the movie Dream Factory at 9 p.m. Please join us as well. And if you want to ask questions, you can also ask by putting your questions at the Q&A button below. If you want to ask also in Indonesian, just let us know. I will be happy to translate them to you. And looking also watch out for the announcement of the winner because every film talk will have giveaways. You can see it in our Instagram or our social media. You can see whether your name has been chosen or not. And I hope that you enjoy our film so far at the Europe Oscar 2020. Let us know your thoughts. We always love to hear them. So see you guys tomorrow and have a good night. Bye bye.